15th, 2023. Tonight we're going to depart from the normal. I needed some animators. I want to pay to have this job done. I've been wanting this for a long time. So if you do animation, pay attention. This is the concept I want to get across tonight. I'm going to share with you some of the stuff I've shared for years on my video number 2 about the original creation, video number 6 about the Hovind theory. I'm going to modify that. I need an animator to make this look good, like Walt Brown's is. His is from 1986. I'll show you that in a minute. Anyway, we're the place where God gets the glory for his creation. We're on Rumble. Let's see, what is that? YouTube, Genesis Baptist Church, Odyssey. Facebook, I guess, is the big one. I've never been on Facebook. Can you show me how to do it, brother? Okay, that's just what I need, something else to do. Okay, we're on Instagram. Get on all these programs. They're all listed on our website, drdino.com. We believe the Bible is absolutely true. God made everything, in 6 days. The flood is what destroyed the world. It made all the fossils and the layers and the canyons. We talk about that video number 6 of my seminar series, Creation Seminar Series, which you can get on our website, drdino.com. So we're supposed to be ready to give an answer. In my seminars, I've tried to put together materials, 18 hours, that'll give you the power, the strength, and the knowledge and the wisdom to give an answer to those that ask a reason. There is no evidence for evolution, but can Christians define exactly what did happen? How did the world get here? I think we need to give a logical answer. We'll work on that tonight. I want to strengthen your faith in God's Word. If you're not saved, I'm going to try to get you converted. A guy called me today. He said, Brother Hovind, you said that on your seminar, and at the end I said, you got me, I got converted. He's called me today to thank me for my seminars. It converted him over to the Lord. Good. And then if you're not saved, I'm going to try to make you uncomfortable. Get busy, do something. All right, you can support our ministry. Join our 777 Club. If you can, give $1 a day. Make any checks to CSE. It's all on drdino.com, D-R-D-I-N-O. Don't do super chats on YouTube. Okay. CSE, Creation Science Evangelism. Okay, get our seminar series, 18 hours for $50. Get 3 of them for $100. Give them out to your friends or enemies. Or do it. Give them to your chaplain at your local county jail or state prison or federal prison. Say, chaplain, can I add these to the library? You'd be surprised how many guys will get saved watching a video series donated. You got to go through the chaplain, though, for video. So please do that. We are straight north of Pensacola in Lenox, Alabama. I was in Pensacola for many years, 30 years, and someone gave us the old gravel pit in Lenox. Perfect place to bring your Boy Scout group, your Awana group. Do you guys remember when they did this photo with the cars and people spelling out D-A-L in the parking lot? Was that your idea, Rex?
I wish it was.
You wish it was? Okay. Pretty cool, yeah. There it is from the drone footage from Rich had a drone. He went up. That lake looks like a dinosaur. That's the big lake we got to do all the fishing and baptizing around here. There's our science center. Speaking of fishing, we got some big fish out there. A guy caught plenty of, never mind, come down, you got to stay at the cabins to fish. Somebody just donated today a 36-foot, 8,000-pound camper up in Utica, Ohio. So if you're coming this way, you can haul it down. Give me a call. We'll help pay for the gas, whatever we got to do. We got to get that thing down here. We have camper hookup spots. It sleeps like 12 people or something. It's a big one, 36-foot camper. Okay, thank you so much, brother, for donating that. If you want to haul it down, let me know. Okay, Rich sent me this today. This year, I want to be more like Jesus. Hang out with sinners, upset religious people, tell stories that make people think, choose unpopular friends, be kind, loving, and merciful, and take naps on boats. He sent me this picture. You know how long that thing took to evolve? Millions of years. Then he sent me this picture. The human brain is an amazing organ. It keeps working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, from before you leave the womb right up until people choose to be atheist. Your brain quits working. So I thought, Rich is always sending me cool pictures. He's a truck driver, drives constantly on the road back and forth all across the country. We need to find him a wife. We found one for Kevin, found one for Joe. We don't have one for you yet, Rex, do we?
No.
You wanted a smart one, though, didn't you? Okay. So if you're bashful, Rich, 40 years old, give me a call. I'll fix you up with Rich, okay? He doesn't know I'm going to do this for him. All right. We also need a donkey. We had 3 llamas, 3 alpacas donated to us, 4 years ago. One by one, they've all mysteriously died. We suspect now coyotes got them because one of our guys, were you up there with them and saw 12 coyotes in the North 40 with Will?
Heard them.
Yeah, heard them, yeah. So we're going to get the donkey up there. Donkeys can explain to coyotes, stay awake. Okay. Now I want to get over to seminar part 2. Right here, Alt-DV, slide number 36, and show you what I need animated. Okay? So if you're an animator, even if you can't do the whole thing, if you can do part of it to get me started. The Bible says, the fool said in his heart, there's no God. See, God looked down from heaven to see if there were any that did understand and seek God. The fool said, there's no God. That's what the Bible says very clearly in Psalm 53 and Psalm 14. Okay. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. He said, how long will you simple ones love simplicity? And you scorners delight in scorning, and you fools hate knowledge. I want to make it so clear of how the flood did the damage to the earth that we see today. The Bible says, a companion of fools shall be destroyed. The mouth of fools poureth out foolishness, and if you smite the scorner, he'll beware. So, in my YouTube one time, I was talking about how the kangaroos got to Australia because the water was lower. After the flood, the continents were bigger. How can that be? Because a whole lot of water is still trapped at the North and South Pole. The ice caps were huge. If the ice caps are bigger, follow me now, the oceans are smaller. If the oceans are smaller, the continents are bigger. Anybody confused? See, all around all the continents, there's what's called a continental shelf. So there would be a huge land bridge between Australia and Vietnam. If you lowered the water on, there's about 30 or 40 feet deep. So Mr. Richard Dawkins, he said in his comments on my channel, on his channel, he said, Hovind forgot to mention the depth of the Timor Sea is more than 10,000 feet. Is that his definition of shallow? Well done, Kent. Your land bridge to Australia theory is destroyed. Mr. Dawkins, no, it is not. Pay attention, okay? He forgot to mention it's 10,000 feet deep. Really? Okay. My land bridge. I said, the atheist asked me, how did kangaroos get to Australia? I said, they hopped. That's how they get everywhere. Between Australia and Vietnam, generally the water's about 30 feet deep. So Mr. Dawkins said, oh no, it's 10,000 feet deep. So I explained it to him. Here we go. Are you ready, Richard? Pay attention. Focus, Daniel-san, okay? Put you in the dunce chair for just a minute, okay? I mentioned the ice caps were larger, making the oceans smaller. So the animals probably had 100 or 200 or 300 years to get where they wanted to go before the ice caps melted back to their current size, raising the oceans the final 100 feet. Oceans average 12,000 feet deep. If you took 100 feet of water out, how much is 100 compared to 12,000? Not much. Take 100 feet of water out and freeze it. Stick it on the North and South Pole. I said they could walk from Indonesia, Vietnam, to Australia. There'd be a land bridge. You can see it from the satellite. See, the water's real shallow. That's the light blue. So he said the Timor Sea is 10,000 feet deep. In one spot it is. The deepest point of the Timor, which some geologists of southeastern extension of the Java Trench, let's see, is 3,000 meters. I agree. Okay. The deepest point of the Timor is 10,000 feet. Hovind forgot to mention the Timor Sea is 10,000 feet. Mr. Dawkins, that's only one part of it. I don't know if you know this, but our lake is like 10 feet deep in the middle, but at the edge, it's 0. Anybody notice that when you're swimming out there? Yeah, duh. My land bridge theory is not destroyed, Mr. Dawkins. Okay. Timor Sea, the deepest point, 10,000 feet. The rest of the sea is much shallower. Richard, I'm going to help you read here, and I'll debate you anytime. Call Standing for Truth, okay? See, there's a deep part of the ocean called the abyss, averages 12,000 feet deep. Then there's the shallow part. And all around the continents, there's what's called a continental shelf. If the oceans were lower, they could go around the deep part of the Timor Sea and stay on dry land and walk to Australia. Not a problem. You walk around the deep part. It's not complicated. So, I'm sorry, my land bridge theory is not destroyed. They could still get from Vietnam all the way to Australia. I tell you what, Mr. Dawkins, come to Alabama. I'll take you up on the tour to the North 40. And there are some places up there, because of the cows, you should walk around some places. It's not complicated. See, walk around. My theory is not destroyed. So what I want is, let's see. I want to play this first here. This is Walt Brown's animated video clip that he did back in 1986. And I would like to use a lot of what he has. As the concept is perfect, but he doesn't have the canopy overhead. the ice canopy, which would explain why the mammoths are found frozen standing up. We'll get into that in a minute, but I want you to listen to the 5 or 6 minutes of his hydroplate theory. The Bible clearly says there was water under the crust of the earth and water above the firmament. Now, some other creationist groups do not believe this. They are wrong. I'm right. Okay? Simple.
We can see on our planet many strange features that can now be linked together and systematically explained as a result of a cataclysmic global flood, whose waters erupted from subterranean chambers with an energy release exceeding the explosion of 10 billion hydrogen bombs.
So the subterranean chambers of water are talked about clearly in the Bible. He founded it upon the seas. We'll cover that in a minute. So I need an animator to do what he's about to do here and show pictures of the earth like it used to be, a cross section, water under the crust, breaking through the crust. Watch this. He did a great job on it.
This explanation shows how major mountains formed very quickly. It explains our coal, oil, and methane deposits, rapid continental drift, why we find on the ocean floor huge trenches, hundreds of canyons, and tens of thousands of volcanoes. It explains the formation of the layered strata in almost all fossils, the frozen mammoths, the so-called ice ages, and major land canyons, especially the Grand Canyon. The pre-flood Earth probably had only one very large supercontinent covered with lush vegetation.
The Bible says God formed the earth to be inhabited. That's why he made it. I can get this in front of me, brother. 70% of the earth today is underwater. 10% is under ice. 10% more is deserts. Only 3% of the earth is habitable. What we're seeing today is a junkyard compared to what God made. He made it to be inhabited. So Mr. Brown is right, Dr. Brown is right. They're mostly land before the flood came. Today it's mostly water.
There were rivers and seas. The mountains were smaller than today's, perhaps 5,000 feet high. According to the hydroplate theory, about half the water that is now in our oceans was originally in interconnected subterranean chambers. This water formed a thin spherical shell about 3/4 of a mile thick, perhaps 10 miles below the surface of the pre-flood Earth. Increasing pressure in the subterranean water stretched the crust, just as a balloon stretches when the pressure inside increases. Failure in the crust began with a microscopic crack which grew in both directions at about 2 miles a second. This crack, following the path of least resistance, encircled the globe in less than 3 hours.
I would say it did more than circle the globe. If you Google fault lines, the earth has cracks. The earth is cracked up like an eggshell. There are fault lines, and all around those lines is where most of the volcanoes and earthquakes still happen today. So I would have the animation show this thing spreading out all over in a net pattern and follow the where the fault lines are today. There's no question the earth is broken up, and still some of the plates are moving. I don't argue, no question. This happened at the flood.
As the crack raced around the earth, the overlying rock crust opened up like a rip in a tightly stretched cloth. The subterranean water was under extreme pressure because of the weight of the 10 miles of rock pressing down on it. So the water exploded violently out of the rupture. All along this globe-encircling crack, fountains of water jetted supersonically into and far above the atmosphere.
This is where I would have a layer of ice. I'll cover this in a minute. I think the Bible clearly teaches there was water above the firmament where the birds fly, Genesis chapter 1. The Jews have always taught it was 2 or 3 fingers thick. I think there was a crystalline canopy. I had one here somewhere, didn't I? Crystal ball? Where'd it go? Oh, it's in the Science Center. No, never mind. It's okay. I think there was a crystalline canopy of super cold ice held up either by the magnetic field or by simple air pressure like an inflatable building, or maybe a combination of both. And we'll get into that in a minute. So he doesn't show I don't know if he believes in the crystal canopy yet. He will when I'm done with this animation.
The spray from these enormous fountains produced torrential rains, such as the earth has never experienced before or after. The Bible states that all the fountains of the great deep burst open on one day. recognize these events about 5,000 years ago that we can now tie together scientifically in cause and effect order. Some of the water jetting high above the stratosphere throws into supercooled ice crystals.
This is where I would maybe slightly differ. I think the crystalline canopy was already there. The stuff shooting up shattered this canopy. So this now slushy canopy would be sucked in and dumped on the North and South Pole because super cold ice is magnetic. Outer space is negative 450 something Fahrenheit, 3 degrees Kelvin, or what, minus 270 centigrade. It's chilly, okay? And super cold ice becomes magnetic. So I think the magnetic field of the Earth sucked it into the poles, causing the ice age. I'll show you in a minute.
And produced massive ice storms, burying, suffocating, and instantly freezing many animals, including the frozen mammoths in Siberia and Alaska. The high-pressure fountains eroded the crumbling rock on both sides of the crack, producing huge volumes of sediments that settled out of this muddy water all over the Earth. Sediments trapped and quickly buried plants and animals, forming the fossil record. Vegetation uprooted by the floodwaters accumulated in certain regions where it was buried and compressed, rapidly becoming our coal, oil, and methane deposits by processes we can duplicate in the laboratory today. Eventually, the rupture became so wide that the newly exposed compressed rock beneath the subterranean chamber sprung upward, giving birth to the mid-oceanic ridge that wraps around the Earth like the seam of a baseball. The continental plates, the hydroplates, with lubricating water still beneath them, slid downhill away from the rising mid-Atlantic ridge. After the massive, slowly accelerating continental plates reached speeds of about 45 miles an hour, they ran into resistances and, like a crashing continental-sized train, compressed, crushed, and buckled. As the continents crushed and thickened, they rose out of the floodwaters. The portion of the hydroplates that buckled down formed ocean trenches. Those that buckled upward formed mountains.
It is interesting, the mountain ranges follow the coastlines. Take a look at the Appalachian Mountains, follow the North Atlantic. The Rocky Mountains follow the North Pacific. Andes Mountains follow the South Pacific. I think he's dead on right here. The mountains and oceans formed at the same time because of the same thing, the buckling of this crust of the Earth.
This is why the major mountain chains are generally parallel to the oceanic ridges from which they slid. This also explains why today's continents do not have the jigsaw fit against each other as so many textbooks mistakenly claim. Instead, the continents would fit much better against the base of the mid-Atlantic ridge, where the continental drift began. The hydroplates, in sliding away from the mid-Atlantic ridge, opened up very deep ocean basins into which the floodwaters eventually drained. This rapid continental drift and the resulting compression and buckling was so cataclysmic that it occurred within a single day. Immediately after the flood, sea level was considerably lower than it is today, so land bridges connected every continent. This allowed people and animals to spread over and repopulate the post-flood Earth. As the thickened continents slowly sank into the Earth's mantle, the new and very deep ocean floors had to rise in compensation for the downward flow of mass.
I would differ slightly. I think it was the ice caps that were huge, melting back for 300 years. That would raise the ocean level also, maybe a combination of both factors. See, if there was water under the crust that escaped to the surface during the flood, the crust would then sink in, half mile or whatever, however thick it was. That would cause the Earth to speed up, which is why we have 365.2422 days in a year. I think it used to be 360. The Earth sped up. I'll cover that later. Okay.
Therefore, sea level rose slowly for a few centuries after the flood and eventually reached today's level. As sea level rose, river channels were drowned, channels that had been cut down to the lowered sea level by the heavy drainage after the flood. This explains the famous submarine canyons that are extensions of our major rivers, such as the Amazon, the Congo, the Indus, the Hudson, and the Ganges. Because some submarine canyons are almost 3 miles below today's sea level, we can conclude that sea level and some seafloors were about 3 miles lower than today. The rising sea eventually flooded the land bridges and produced the look of the continents as they appear today, separated by water. As the floodwaters drained off the continents, every continental basin was naturally left brimful of water, producing many post-flood lakes. Because of local conditions, some of these lakes simply dried up. Others continued to collect water from rainfall and drainage from higher elevations. Sometimes a large lake spilled over its rim at the lowest point, eroding a notch. If the rim wall was composed of sediments that were still soft, the escaping water quickly enlarged and deepened the notch.
See, if the crust of the earth has, pick a number, 2 miles, 3 miles of sedimentary rock, it was at that time all mud. After the flood, for the first few years, the crust would begin to harden and dry out, but underneath it's still mud. So once, like Grand Canyon, once it gets started and it cuts through that crust, say 50 or 100 feet thick, then it gets to the soft part, and then the erosion goes real fast.
As the volume and speed of the escaping water increased, so did its eroding power, until the entire lake surged through a deep slit, forming a canyon. The largest canyon formed by this process is the Grand Canyon of Arizona. North and east of the Grand Canyon was a huge lake that I identified in 1988 and named Grand Lake. Its dumping released more water than is in all 5 of the Great Lakes. Grand Lake spilled over its rim and carved this spectacular funnel 20 miles south of Page, Arizona, catastrophically forming the Grand Canyon within a few weeks, and leaving a living testament to this terrible global flood, which can now be studied in person today.
Today at the bottom of Grand Canyon, which is 18 miles wide, there's a little river 50 feet wide. That river didn't make that canyon. It flows through the crack left over from the Grand Lake overflowing the Kaibab Plateau. Anyway, that's Walt Brown's hydroplate theory. I think 2 Peter 3 said the scoffers are ignorant of what the original creation was like, and they're ignorant of the flood, and they're ignorant of the coming judgment of God. The original creation had water under the crust of the earth, most of which is now in the oceans. So what did they eat before the flood? What's it going to be like when God restores the earth? We cover all that on video number 2 of my seminar series. So where'd all that water go? One atheist said if the world was covered in water in Noah's flood, where'd all that water go? I said, it's still here, it's in the oceans. I flew from Australia back to America over the Pacific Ocean. We flew really fast for a long, long time. I told one of the guys in my office, I said, that Pacific Ocean's huge. He said, oh, that was just the top of it. What a thought, yeah. There's a lot of water out there, enough to cover the earth. If the earth were smooth, not flat, if the earth were smooth, it'd be 8,800 feet deep everywhere. So I think things were different. There were scoffers who are willingly ignorant of how God made the heavens, willingly ignorant, right here. That means dumb on purpose. And it's heavens. There are 3 heavens mentioned in the Bible. The world was overflowed with water and perished. The scoffers are ignorant how he made it and how it was overflowed. And the heavens and the earth, which are now, by the same word, are kept in store, reserved. See, the scoffers are ignorant of the creation, they're ignorant of the flood, and they're ignorant of the coming judgment of God. Coming soon to a city near you. I like that bumper sticker. Jesus is coming, and boy, is he mad. Yeah, okay. Anyway, most Christians are also ignorant of those, which is why I did the series on what on earth is about to happen, for heaven's sake. Folks, we're headed for a disaster on planet Earth. Buckle up, get ready. Okay, let's see. Ignorant, creation, flood, coming judgment of God. First day. God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. So what's the firmament? Well, we'll see in a minute. The Bible tells us what it is in a few verses later. But it says this firmament is in the midst, it's in the middle of the water, and it divides the waters from the waters. Well, what divides the water from the water today? People say the dirt keeps the water away from the water. No, that's not what it is here. It says in verse 20, the birds fly in the firmament. Birds don't fly in the dirt. Birds fly in the air, okay? God said, let there be lights in the firmament. This is talking about the stars. See, this is the second heaven. The first heaven is where the birds fly. The second heaven is where the stars are. The third heaven, talked about 2 Corinthians 12, Paul said he was caught up to the third heaven. That's where God lives. 3 heavens mentioned in the Bible. The heavens declare the glory of God. There's 3 heavens. Okay. So God made the firmament, that would be the air, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. I don't know how some of these other creation ministries, maybe they don't have the right Bible, but they don't believe there was a canopy of water above. I'm sorry, you're wrong. The Bible clearly says there was water above the firmament. There might still be water or ice above the stars. Praise him, ye heavens of heavens, and ye waters that be above the heaven. This is book of Psalm, written 1,000 years BC, way after the flood. Waters that be above the heavens. I think there might be another layer of ice way out there beyond the stars. Nobody knows where the last star is, and if they could find it, what's the next obvious question? What's after that, right? Paul said he was caught up to the third heaven. He was caught up into paradise and heard unspeakable words. I think everything we see, all the stars, in a big glass ball on God's dresser. He picks up and shakes it once in a while. How you doing in there? Yeah, we'll see. Okay. February 11th, 2022, Hubble telescope said there are 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe, 10 times more than they thought. Who'd have thunk it? And each galaxy has 100 million stars. That's a lot. Where does it stop? Where's the edge of the universe? What happens at the edge? Well, nobody knows, but I think you go beyond that to heaven, okay? The third heaven. So he said that scoffers are willingly ignorant of how God made the heavens and the earth, watch this now, standing out of the water and in the water. God said he sits on the circle of the earth and he stretcheth out the heavens. 17 times in the Bible it says God stretched out the heavens. I think he made the earth first, like it says in Genesis. Then he made the stars later and stretched them out into place. They might be billions of light years away and 6,000 years old. They're asking, how did that light from the star get here? You're asking the wrong question. He stretched out the heavens. He said it 17 times. I think he wants us to get the message. 17 times he stretched out the heavens. And he made the earth first on day 1. He made the stars on day 4. And then stretched them out. So you're asking the wrong question. It's not how did the light get from there to here, but how did the star get from here to there? Got it all backwards. So the scoffers are ignorant of the creation, the flood, and the coming judgment. Earth's atmosphere today has 6 layers to it. At 10 miles up, it's minus 60 degrees Fahrenheit. 60 miles up, right now, over the desert, it's 80 degrees below zero Fahrenheit. It's chilly. It's called a heat sink up there. I believe there used to be a 7th layer to the atmosphere, a layer of ice above the atmosphere, probably squeezing all the air down to 10 or 12 miles. The fact that ice is diamagnetic can be demonstrated by hanging an icicle from a very thin string and bring a strong magnet near one end. The icicle will twist. Yes, super cold ice is magnetic. Why is Arctic ice like a magnet? Interesting. Well, we can take all day on this, but for the animation, what I want is somebody to draw, animate the idea of the Earth having a canopy of ice 10 or 12 miles above the atmosphere, squeezing all what currently our atmosphere goes up for hundreds of miles, squeezing it all down into 10 or 12 miles. The Earth has layers. The troposphere, the atmosphere has layers. Troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, exosphere, ionosphere. There used to be a crystalline canopy above. That would help block some of the UV light. Visible light goes right through, but the canopy of ice would block ultraviolet radiation, which is one of the things that makes your skin wrinkle and you age. I think they lived for it to be 900 before the flood came. So this ice was probably suspended by either the magnetic field, because it is magnetic, or like an inflatable building. If it was one continuous shell of ice, it would be held up by the Earth's magnetic field. By the air pressure. And just gravity, as we go around the sun, the side toward the sun would suck the Earth in a little bit. There'd be a little bit of a tidal pumping, making circulation of the air between the crystalline canopy and the crust of the Earth. Big inflatable buildings get pretty big. They make some really big ones. They're just held up by air pressure. 7 of the world's most intense inflatable structures. Okay, really a great big one, having a party in that one. See, an inch of ice, inch thick layer, weighs about 5 pounds per square foot. So if it was 2 or 3 inches thick, it'd be about 10 pounds per square foot, held up either by the magnetic field or like an inflatable building. The ice canopy, it would be what's called the Meissner effect. In Japan, they've got high-speed trains. They float them just off the tracks with magnets. Here's a magnet floating above a superconductor, the Meissner effect. Here's how to make a spooky levitating pumpkin using super cold ice. Yeah, all right. Can a permanent magnet become too cold to function? Well, you can read all about ice, and there's an ice skateboard, hoverboard. Doesn't touch the ground, float on it. Who cares? Apex magnets. What happens to a magnet in cold temperatures? It's called the concentrator effect. You can get into all that if you'd like. Oxygen absorption and the magnetic susceptibility of ice at low temperatures. Physics world. Magnetic ice, charged ice slides into view. New material, magnetic charged ice created by physicists in the US. Here's a magnet floating above liquid nitrogen. So I believe, and what I want for my animation, is a crystalline canopy 2 or 3 fingers thick, floating above the earth, maybe 10 miles, and the earth underneath to be mostly land. Because under that, there's going to be a layer of water under the crust of the earth, where the flood comes from. See, it rained for 40 days. The water kept coming up for 150 days. It's not all coming from rain. Ice clouds from the space shuttle drift into the north to the pole. The Bible says, in the book of Josephus, who wrote about the time of Christ, he set the heaven above the universe, surrounding it with ice. Here's what the Jews taught, Josephus' book. He placed a crystalline firmament around it on the second day. God made the firmament, the thickness being 3 fingers. This guy said the firmament was 2 fingers. And Jews fight over everything. I'm sure they split the church and started the church of the 2 fingers and the church of the 3 fingers. I don't care. A couple-inch layer of ice, all right? The flattened solid surface. The second day, God brought forth 4 creations, the firmament, hell, fire, and the angels. The firmament is not the same as the heavens of the first day. It's a crystal stretched forth over the heads of the hayat, which means all the animals, the living things, I believe. So there was a crystalline canopy. It's what they taught. He made it to crystallize into solid. The firmament is not more than 3 fingers thick. See, it would be like an Eskimo igloo. It can be really cold outside, and you can be insulated by a layer of snow. Let's see. Outside, the temperature might be 49 below 0 Fahrenheit. Inside, temperature up to 61 degrees. Not too bad. So what I want is a canopy of ice above at, say, 10 or 12 miles. If our current 60 miles of air were squeezed down to 10 miles, it would increase air pressure anywhere from 50 to 100%, making it possible for larger creatures to live, like, dinosaurs. If the air was more compressed, it'd be easier to fly. You could get larger flying animals, like the 30-inch dragonflies. Couldn't fly today, the air's too thin. It would also be a higher concentration of oxygen, I believe. The amber air bubbles they find in amber, like Jurassic Park, have 32% oxygen. Average temperature of empty space, minus 457 Fahrenheit, chilly. So there'd be a canopy of ice overhead and water under the crust of the earth. The Bible says the earth is the Lord's. He founded it upon the seas. Wait a minute, he founded the earth upon the seas and established it upon the floods. He layeth up the depth in storehouses. The depth is always a reference to the oceans in the Bible. He stretched out the earth above the waters. It could not be more clear. When God made it, there was water in the crust of the earth, and I think a crystalline canopy overhead. So Paul was caught up to paradise. So this is what I want. I want to show, like Walt Brown did, this water underneath shooting forth, cracking the earth up like an eggshell, shattering the canopy. The water underneath, from Walt's hydroplate theory, his book is right here, In the Beginning. Do we sell this one, Bobby? In the Beginning, Walt Brown? We should. See if we can get it. It's fabulous. Okay? Very, very, very well done. Okay. It says, in the 600th year of Noah's life, the fountains of the deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. See, it rained 40 days. It says the waters so the flood was 40 days. The waters increased, and the waters increased greatly upon the earth, and the waters prevailed exceedingly. They kept going up. This is from the water underneath coming to the top and the crust sinking into the hole. If there was a half mile of water under there that shot to the top, the crust would sink in, and 2 things would cause it. The water coming up would flood it, plus the crust sinking is going to flood the ocean. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail. And the waters prevailed 150 days. So it's not all coming from rain. It rained 40 days. Water kept coming up for 150 days. So I think he's dead on in his book, in his hydroplate theory, the water came shooting out. A cubic foot of rock weighs about 160 pounds, depending on what type of rock. 10 miles of rock would put about 8.5 million pounds of pressure per square foot. That's 30 tons per square inch. Once the crack develops, the water would launch things out into space with that much pressure. The Earth is all cracked up like an eggshell, no question, and that's where most of the fault lines are, and earthquakes still are today. Base fault data, San Andreas Fault, the Hayward Fault, the New Madrid Fault, they're all over the place. America's got hundreds of faults. This water shooting up, like he shows in his book, is exactly correct. This would launch some things out into space. It would shatter the canopy, and some of them would just keep on going if they were depending on the velocity, force behind it. Many would then fall back to Earth, depending if they don't have enough escape velocity. But some might have got lost out in space, and they're drifting around out there, and that's what might put all the craters on the moon. It's interesting, the near side of the moon is very different than the far side. I think some went up and hit the moon dead on like a shotgun. Others went past the moon, drifted back in by moon's gravity, and made the smaller craters on the backside. Why is there such a difference in the cratering? I think we should consider at least the flood is involved in cratering the moon. There are craters all over the Earth, craters all over on Mars. It got hit by stuff. I think it came from the Earth. Some of it came back and hit the Earth. There are impact sites all over the Earth, like the Barringer crater in Winslow, Arizona. So 300 miles up, this guy says the Earth's atmosphere is 300 miles thick. Okay, but it's real thin. Past 5 miles, it's hard to breathe. Mount Everest, 5 miles tall. Try to stand up there and breathe. Got to carry oxygen tanks. Most of it's within 10 miles. So the pre-flood canopy, ice canopy around the Earth would be surrounded by space, minus 459 or whatever, 454, and keep it magnetic. So when it does shatter and turn to like a giant slushy, it would be sucked in and dumped on the poles. The ice canopy would crumble and the water under the crust would burst forth, but during the flood, the ice caps were huge. Up near the North Pole, they find frozen bobcat, camels, bison, mammoths. No camels live up by the North Pole. I think it was a habitable planet, pole to pole. Then the ice got dumped on them like a giant slushy, and when they drill through the ice, they drill through the ice cores, they find all kinds of strange things, 14,000 feet of ice. Scientists discovered the first set of dinosaur fossils found in the interior of Antarctica. Wow, plant-eating dinosaur, 25 to 30 feet long, 400 miles from the South Pole. There are no trees in Antarctica. Let's see, there's Antarctica, I'm sorry. Thousands of well-preserved leaves in Antarctica. Said it had a near-temperate climate as recently as 3 million years ago. Forget the 3 million. This was because of the flood. Mr. Webb, assistant professor of geology, let's see, they found leaves on the side of a cliff 250 miles from the South Pole. I think everybody would agree there was an ice age, and the ice came all the way down to southern Illinois. There was certainly an ice age, and it left behind very noticeable features, terminal moraines, lateral moraines, isostatic rebound, all that stuff. Okay. On the left is the maximum extent of the ice. It's interesting, the ice caps, the ice age, is centered around the magnetic North Pole, not the geographic pole we spin around. 10% of Earth's land is covered in glaciers. At the last ice age, glaciers covered 32% of the land. Glaciers store about 75% of the world's fresh water. This is critical now. If the ice caps were huge, and they obviously were, pushing out all the way down like that, when it melts back, it leaves behind a pile of boulders in front, called a terminal moraine, right? Nobody argues about that. I interviewed Charles Morrow. He was 81 at the time in Texarkana. He said in the early 50s, 75 people ate mammoth meat at the New York dinner for the Arctic Institute of North America, where he worked. They found a frozen mammoth, cut the pieces off and ate it. Mammoths are sometimes found frozen upright, undigested food in their mouth and stomach. They died of suffocation. There's no water found in the lungs. Small ice crystals in the blood means they probably froze in less than 5 hours. How do you get a big, huge, nice, warm elephant with a lot of insulating hair to freeze in 5 hours? That requires 300 below zero. I think it came from the crystalline canopy overhead being shattered and dumped on these critters. So ice caps were larger, making the oceans smaller. This is what the Earth looked like, I think, when Noah got off the ark. The continental shelf was all part of the continent. That last few hundred feet got covered hundreds of years later by the melting ice. England would be part of France, making the British very upset. Hey, did you guys know the Queen of England invented the microwave? You ever see her go like this? Never mind, okay. The English Channel, I mean, you can see it from space. It's not very deep. I think it's 30 miles wide where we went across the, in the World War II to take over Normandy Beach. And it's only like 50 feet deep. That's deep enough to drown in, but it's really not much. Between Alaska and Russia, it's about 60 feet deep. So if you lowered the oceans a few hundred feet, Alaska and Russia would be connected by a giant land bridge. That's what Florida and North America would look like. The continental shelf would all be exposed. I think as the Atlantic Ocean filled in from melting ice, it would spill back over the top between Florida and Cuba and carve out a canyon and fill up the Gulf of Mexico. That should be in the animation, where that comes maybe 50 years into the melting period. Mobile and Pensacola Bay, generally less than 7 feet deep. So if the oceans were smaller, continents were bigger, they could hop to Australia. Populations spread out for several hundred years. Less aggressive animals, marsupials like kangaroos, koalas, would tend to avoid and just leave their home and let the tiger have it and move on. They ended up getting stuck in Australia, so there's a migration wave coming from the ark, and they spread out. And they ended up in Australia a couple hundred years later, about the same time the ice is melting enough to isolate them. Now all of a sudden they're protected. So they can stand in Australia and look at the tiger across the river and go, "Nana boo, you can't get me." I think this happened within the first 300 years after the flood. So why do we have a continental shelf? It's real simple. Continental shelf is about 100 feet down on nearly all the continents. It varies a little because there's been isostatic rebound since then. But if you took 100 feet of water out of the 12,000 ocean, and everything's connected. So the shattering of the pre-flood ice canopy would let the atmosphere expand. People say, well, if it rained 40 days, the heat generated by the latent heat of condensation would cook the world. Yes, guys, you are correct. Rain causes increased temperature, but expanding atmosphere causes a lowering of the temperature. So there would be both happening at the same time. The rain is heating it, and the atmosphere is expanding, cooling it. You ever get a can of hairspray and just hold the button down? It gets real cold in your hand. Any compressed air does that. So the latent heat of condensation is what happens when it rains. I agree. But then compressed air being released cools it. So it's not a problem. It's simple physics. You can study that freshman high school physics. Okay, I taught that for years. That's how an air conditioner works. You compress the Freon and let it expand, and it gets cold. We'll study all that sometime later. Coal was all formed at the time of the flood, like Walt Brown said. There are some huge coal seams. I mean, really huge, solid coal. All that would be from the pre-flood world. See, the pre-flood world was mostly habitable, and so there was a whole lot of trees, huge trees. They got turned to coal at the time of the flood. The rain would raise the temperature, the collapse of the canopy and expansion of the air would lower the temperature. The moon is constantly pulling our water up, making a bump. Well, if the moon is holding a bump of water, and while we spin, how's the bump staying full? Where's the water coming from to fill that bump? It's being dragged in from all sides. That's where all the layers form. The geologic column is from the sideways movement of the water. And all the layers are the same age. The scoffers are ignorant of the flood, whereby the world was overflowed. So Walt's right. As the mid-Atlantic ridge would rise up, it would cause the continent to slide back. This is rising up, sliding back, which is why we have wrinkled mountains, like push carpeting into the wall. It'll wrinkle up like that. So the lateral compression squeezing from the sides and lifting it up in some places, I think all the geology of the earth can only be explained by Noah's flood. So that's basically what I want to get covered. If somebody wants to do some animations for me, send me a sample of what you work before you get too far into it, and say, Brother Hovind, I can animate the whole thing for X amount. Somewhere, what do we got, 20 bucks? 250? Okay. Now, I really want this. I think this will help. Walt Brown's is great. It's 30 years old. I think there's more needs added to it. Okay, any questions from here? That's it. We'll get back on schedule tomorrow night, hopefully. But if you can help me, give me a call. 855-BIG-DINO, extension 3. Say, Brother Hovind, I do animations. Send me samples of what you do. And this is what I want to do. Maybe we get Walt Brown's permission to use some of his. What he did was good. Just need to add to it. And I know Walt Brown personally, so but if he's 87 now or something, way up there. So that's it, brother. See you tomorrow. Bye.